Have you ever wondered why, after all the effort to be a good man, you still get left behind? Why a woman can smile at you today but act like you never existed tomorrow? It's a bitter pill to swallow. You're smart, you're kind, you have all the right things, and yet in her eyes, you're nothing more than a blurry shadow lost in a crowd of nobodies. Modern men are trapped in one of the most sophisticated lies ever sold, that if you're patient, polite, and prove yourself worthy, love will come. But the brutal truth is this: the world doesn't reward blind kindness. Women don't walk away because you're not good enough. They walk away because next to you, they no longer feel alive. You've been deceived into becoming the safe version, the predictable version, the man who bends over backward to be agreeable. But what she secretly craves isn't safety. It's a man who jolts her heart out of autopilot, who makes her pulse race without permission. Somewhere along the way, you buried that primal edge inside you. The question is, how long will you keep denying it? And isn't it about time you finally wake up from this comfortable, humiliating dream? When a man meets a new woman, most of them make the same deadly mistake. They try to score points by being polite, intellectual, or finding a few common interests. They believe that if they both like the same movie, drink the same coffee, or share a similar hobby, a bond will be created. But as the psychologist Daniel Kahneman once wrote, people don't make decisions based on reason. They make them based on emotion. Connection doesn't grow out of similarity. It is born out of stimulation of the nervous system, something that makes her heart skip a beat. Picture her like a radio constantly scanning for signals. Dozens of men are sending the same static. You're so pretty. What do you do for work? I like that book too. All of it blends into background noise. But when you throw in a spark of emotion, an unexpected tease, a sharp look, a question that doesn't fit the script, you've just broken her flatline. Her body, always scanning for signs of life, immediately sends an alert. Hold on. This one is different. And in that instant, you've slipped into her mind. Not through looks, not through accomplishments, but through an emotional jolt. It's the same reason a song suddenly shifting key grabs your attention. You no longer hear it the same way. You remember it. This is what every man needs to tattoo into his brain. She doesn't need you to be logical. She needs you to make her feel. Logic is processed. Emotion is imprinted. Logic may convince for a moment, but emotion gets stored inside her nervous system. That's why a clumsy joke or a bold, playful comment is often remembered far longer than an entire evening of polite storytelling. Here's the paradox. You don't need her to like you right away. You only need to become the man who makes her body react. Once you do that, you're not just present in the room, you're alive inside her memory. But let me be clear, this isn't a license to be rude, creepy, or clownish. It's an art. The art of creating an emotional spike, that precise moment where she feels a flicker of surprise or intrigue that she didn't see coming. Maybe it's a sly smile when you say something that contradicts her expectation. Maybe it's a question so unusual it makes her stop and think, is he serious or is he challenging me? At that moment, you're no longer the guy struggling to impress her. You've become and experienced something her body and mind cannot simply brush aside. And once you understand that aliveness matters more than perfection, you start playing a different game entirely. A game not about seeking approval, but about commanding attention. Because when you master this, you stop asking, "Does she like me?" and start asking a far more powerful question. Did I make her feel something she can't forget? Here's a hard truth: in the eyes of most women, men all look the same. Not because they don't have individuality, but because the moment they step into a conversation, they put on the same mask of polite gentlemen. The questions roll out like background elevator music. What's your name? What do you do for work? Where are you from? Every man thinks he's being respectable, but what he's really being is predictable. And the human brain is designed to erase repetition, which means if you stick to the script, you've already lost before you even start. What she needs isn't more information. What she craves is a moment of disruption, something that pulls her out of the autopilot trance of everyday life. In cognitive psychology, it's called pattern interruption, a break in the familiar sequence. And when that pattern shatters, the brain instantly shifts to alert mode. Wait, this is new. Pay attention. That's the golden moment when you slip into her emotional memory. Think of her inner world like a steel door locked tight. Dozens of men knock with the same key, and none of them enter. But if you show up and tap out a rhythm she's never heard before, you don't just get noticed, you get remembered. And curiosity, once awakened, becomes the spark that fuels desire. This is where most men collapse. They're terrified of breaking comfort. They believe that if they stand out too much, they'll be rejected. But it's the exact opposite. Safety is death. Remember Nietzsche's words, "What is familiar makes us sleepy. Only the unfamiliar wakes the instincts." Women don't want another polite dialogue to add to the pile. They want a tremor, a spark, a reason to step out of the shell they've built. So how do you do it? You stop talking to her resume version, the version she gives her professors, her coworkers, and the boring men she meets on dates. And instead you talk to the hidden version, the one underneath. She tells you she studies psychology. Don't nod politely and say, "Oh, so you want to be a therapist?" That's a dead end. Instead, tilt your head, look her in the eyes and say, "So does that mean you like understanding people or controlling them?" Boom. In an instant, you've forced her to feel her way to an answer. And the moment she has to feel before she can respond, you've stepped past the shell and into her inner world. This isn't a cheap trick. It's the power of presence. When you ask what no one else dares to ask, you're giving her a rare experience to be seen, to be challenged, to be stirred. In a society where everyone wears masks of politeness, the man who tears off the mask becomes unforgettable. Of course, this requires finesse. You're not attacking her. You're not trying to corner her. You're guiding her into the territory most people ignore her truth beneath the surface. Questions like, "What's something you feel nobody ever truly gets about you?" Or, "Have you ever met someone who made you feel understood without you having to say a word?" These aren't data points. They're emotional keys, and they open doors facts never could. When you master this, something strange happens. She no longer sees you as a stranger. She no longer files you away with the others. Instead, you become the man who touched pieces of her she rarely even acknowledges herself. And do you know what that means? It means that when the night is over, when she's lying in the dark, replaying the day, the name echoing in her mind is yours. Here's a truth most men don't want to face. You've become too predictable, too transparent, too easy to read, like a cheap paperback that nobody bothers to finish. Yet what keeps women hooked isn't fullness, it's the unfinished gaps. The human mind despises incompleteness. Psychologist George Lowenstein called it the tension of the gap, the discomfort of an unanswered question. When a story doesn't resolve, the brain can't let it go. It circles back again and again, gnawing at the loose thread. That's how you live rent-free in a woman's head, not by telling her everything, but by withholding just enough. Look at the men who fail in love. They all do the same thing, they overshare. Their job, their childhood, their past, heartbreak, every detail spilled out like a confession. They think full disclosure builds trust. But the brutal truth is too much information kills desire. She listens, she categorizes you neatly in her mental filing cabinet, stamps you with processed, and moves on. But if you drop a single line, "That city reminds me of something strange I went through, but I'll tell you that story another time," then go quiet. You've just driven a small needle into her thoughts. That night, lying in bed, she'll wonder, what was that story? Was it dark? Was it funny? Was it about another woman? Why didn't he finish? And now you're on repeat in her mind. Mystery doesn't mean silence forever. It means leaving unfinished pieces. It's like music that stops just before the final note. The tension drives people insane until they play it again. You become that unresolved note, the half-open door, the flame that flickered once and left her craving its return. Alongside mystery, there's another force just as powerful: unresolved tension. When she teases, you don't laugh nervously and fold. When she challenges, you don't scramble for approval. Instead, let the silence hang for a beat, then smirk. I don't date girls like you either, but maybe tonight I'll make an exception. In that moment, you've cracked her logic. You're not reacting to her frame, you're pulling her into yours. And that's where attraction lives, in the unresolved. Freud once said, desire is sustained by delay. Don't hand everything over. Don't resolve every question. Don't close the loop. Leave her waiting. Most men can't stand silence. They fill every gap with words, every pause with explanation, every insecurity with proof. But a man with presence, he can sit in the silence knowing that absence is often the loudest invitation. Here's the paradox. The less you explain, the more weight you carry. The less you give, the more you're desired. Because in a world drowning in noise, nothing is more magnetic than what hasn't yet been touched. Remember this. You don't want to be the book she finishes in one night and tosses aside. You want to be the novel she can't stop rereading, losing sleep because every chapter ends at the edge of revelation. That's the secret to lasting attraction: mystery and tension. Two flames that keep her restless. Two wounds she keeps picking at, even when she swears she's done. It's time to tell you something that will make a lot of men uncomfortable if you're still trying to impress her. Deep down, you've already placed yourself beneath her. And a man who kneels in his own mind cannot create desire in a woman. Picture this: a guy bragging about his car, his money, his travels. She doesn't think, wow, he's impressive. She thinks, why is he trying so hard to prove this to me? Because truly valuable men don't prove. They simply exist, and the world bends around their presence. What you need isn't to impress. What you need is to make her react. When you drop a bold line and lean back, she has to process it. When you challenge her with a playful smirk, she has to adjust her rhythm to yours. In that moment, you flip the script. She's no longer the judge, she's the contestant. And this is where you can wield one of the most misunderstood weapons: humor. Everyone says just make her laugh. But most men turn themselves into clowns. They use humor to beg for approval. They self-deprecate, hoping she'll lift them up. And that's the fastest way to kill attraction. Real humor doesn't come from seeking acceptance. It comes from framing yourself as the prize. It's not about jokes. It's about attitude delivered with a grin. Instead of nervously saying, I hope I'm not boring you, ha ha, which screams insecurity, you tilt your head and say, be honest. How lucky do you feel sitting here with me right now? Same smile, same light tone, but completely different frame. That's the power of perspective. From the frame of a pleaser, your humor entertains but evaporates. From the frame of the prize, your humor unsettles. She laughs, but then she starts questioning herself. Am I lucky? What is it about him that makes me want to prove myself? And that's when the dynamic shifts. This isn't arrogance. It's the natural energy of a man who knows his worth. He doesn't show up hoping to be accepted. He shows up to see who qualifies to stay. And in a world filled with men chasing validation, the man who doesn't chase becomes unforgettable. Ask yourself, who do you want to be? The good guy, sweet, predictable, and replaceable. Or the man who walks into a room and instantly alters its gravity, forcing others to adjust their breath to his rhythm. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not telling you to turn into a hollow egomaniac. I'm telling you to stop performing for approval and start creating moments that demand reaction. Think of a concert. The audience doesn't remember every note played perfectly. They remember the moment the orchestra stopped cold, then erupted. That's you. You're the moment. Sometimes a single joke at the right time hits harder than 1,000 lines of scripted charm. If she asks, "What kind of girls do you usually date?" don't rattle off a list, just smirk. Usually I avoid dangerous women, but tonight I might be slipping. The whole table laughs, but underneath the laughter you've planted the seed. You're the one leading, she's the one trying to keep up. Once you master this, you stop chasing women's eyes. Instead, they chase yours. Because in your gaze they find challenge, safety, play, and mystery all at once, and that combination is irresistible. If you've made it this far, I want you to sit still for a minute and be brutally honest with yourself. Do you really want to keep living the way you have been? Living as the good guy, polite, safe, and visible? Or are you ready to face the pain, to face the truth that women don't leave you because you're not good enough? They leave because next to you, they stop feeling alive. I know that truth stings, it cuts deep, but sometimes only pain can wake up the beast that has been asleep inside you. You weren't born to be a safe copy, another predictable shadow in a world of replaceable men. You were born to be the man who changes the air in the room when he walks in, the man whose presence alters the pulse of those around him. What I've shared with you isn't pick-up tricks. It's a reminder of something you once had your primal edge, and it's time to reclaim it. You don't have to shout. You don't have to brag. You only have to exist with the calm intensity of a mountain, unmoved, unshaken, yet impossible to ignore. So what happens if you don't change? You'll keep sending desperate messages into the void, hoping one day someone will notice you. But deep down, you already know that day never comes. And what happens if you do change? You won't just attract women. You'll reclaim yourself, a man who no longer lives to be accepted, but lives to lead. If what I've said has struck a chord in you, don't keep it to yourself. Out there, another man is lost. Another man is dying slowly inside his own niceness. Share this message with him, not as a fan, but as a brother in arms. Because when one man wakes up, he changes his life. But when thousands of men wake up, we change a generation. And if you're ready, welcome back to who you were always meant to be.